Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 271. You three are very stupid. Princess Ling Meng's entire body started to tremble. Jun Xie's devilish expression had frightened her. So much so that she didn't even dare to cry. In fact, you didn't try to escape when Yi Guhan sustained seriously injuries. Indeed, it is very good of you. You are very formidable. Your Highness, you're very attached to him. You were willing to do so much for your Uncle Yi. This is so moving. I admire you so much. Jun Xie gnashed his teeth and nodded ferociously. He then let out an earth-shattering roar. You didn't even think of the other people with you. You didn't think about your two good sisters. You got so emotional that you wouldn't escape no matter what. But did you think they would abandon you and escape? You could have caused them great harm. In fact, you could have gotten them killed. All three of you would have been killed and turned into a pile of rotting flesh if the assailant's intention had been to assassinate you instead of kidnapping you. Your beauty wouldn't have been of much use then. Your death wouldn't have been that much of a tragedy if you were the enemy's target. However, you managed to involve your two innocent sisters as well. How would you have felt if something had happened to them? But Princess Ling Meng felt a sense of foreboding deep in her heart. She also felt somewhat ashamed. Hence, she didn't dare to meet Jun Xie's eyes. Moreover, she didn't even dare to look at her sisters who stood beside her. But what? Jun Xie's voice and expression were very stern. However, and when Yi Guhan was lying on the ground, on the verge of death. What was going on in your head then? This is such a piece of muddled logic. Let's say that Yi Guhan doesn't die while defending you. And you are safe. Then there would have been no problems in that situation. In fact, if Yi Guhan had died in order to protect you, it would have been a willing death. But he put his life on the line to cover for your escape. Your escape was to be the price of his life. But not only did you not escape, you remained motionless. You would have made his death entirely meaningless. It would have been for nothing. He would have traded his life to give you a chance to escape. But he would have died a discontent death because of you. Stupid woman. But how will you be able to understand? Your head is full of curd. Ha! You're stupid, and beyond help. You believe that your brain is not that bad? And you even boasted your intelligence. You felt that you're something that I should not be looking down upon, bah. He felt delight and a sense of accomplishment in bullying her. This was only natural since the princess had previously disregarded and disdained his existence. And you? He pointed at Dugu Xiaoyi. The knife I gave you, do you find tying it to your arm very amusing? Why don't you tie it inside the crotch of your trousers? Don't you know that the knife law fits you? And using it with this knife can yield excellent results? But how's tying it to your arm of any use? Has your head been kicked by a donkey? Jun Xie was panting heavily. But he continued to scold. Why are you reluctant to do it? What else do you plan to do with it? It's a knife. What is it used for? Knives aren't used as ornaments. Nor are they used as decorations. Knives are used to cut people, to chop enemies, and to kill. What would you accomplish with it by tying it to your arm? I forged it with so much effort. Didn't you guess that your everyday sweat and smell might corrode this knife since you tied to your arm? Do you know how much mental and physical effort, time, and energy it took me to forge this beautiful knife? What a waste. Stupid. You are incorrigibly stupid as well. If her head is full of curd, yours must be flooded with water. Someone needs to shake that nonsense out of your head. Jun Moxie pointed at debauchee. He almost spluttered on her face. Debauchee's face became pale as she made an effort to evade his spit. Moreover, their objective wasn't you. Princess Ling Meng wasn't willing to escape. But you two didn't hurry up the road to look for reinforcements. You just foolishly looked on until the enemy arrived. The enemies were Sky Xian experts. Do you understand what a Sky Xian is? You are like beggars declaring their intent to revolt against the king. That's exactly what you are in front of them. The enemy could have torn your weak bodies with their fingertips. They could have crushed you two into pieces by pressing their fingers. No. Not even a single piece of your body would remain. You were like an ant trying to shake a tree. The only praise I can give you two is for insulting those Sky Xian level enemies with your actions. You're the second stupid woman of this gang. Jun Moxie drew a long breath as he made his conclusion. And you? You think you're very smart, right? Jun Moxie wasn't about to let Sun Xiaomei off either. They didn't understand, but are you stupid too? You couldn't get it either? Are you aware that you should have been escaping, and not enjoying the view of the street? Weren't you supposed to flee for your life? And that stupid escape route you picked was something only a brainless person would choose. You wouldn't have found many winding roads ahead. But there were houses on both sides of the road. And there would have been many whose front door would have been connected to a back door. That would have led you to an alley at the back. That would have been safer. Right? Yet unexpectedly, you madly rushed onto the main road. Do you think your speed is faster than a Sky Xian expert's? I know that your looks aren't good. Therefore, you behave in an unconventional manner. You look at problems. You look at people. And you look at matters in an incisive manner. Therefore, you're very cocky in this respect. But your pride is worth a fart. How is it useful? You never look at yourself. You only scrutinize others. And most of that is bogus as well. Do you have a brain? Xiao Yi isn't very logical regarding such matters, and Princess Ling Meng's mind was very muddy. You were the only clear-headed individual there. So, couldn't you just knock out the princess and then leave with her? I'm sure that you could have escaped with ease if you had knocked out that stupid woman early on. And even Yi Gu Han could have escaped if you would have done it. You tell me, am I right or am I wrong? Don't ever think you can understand others without understanding yourself first. Jun Moxie pounded the table. And don't by any means think that you're so clever that you can understand everyone's intentions. You think that you can understand a man's psychology and a woman's weaknesses? Let me tell you. The thoughts of men and women are their own, and no one would ever want someone else to control them. Don't ever weigh someone else's personality with your pitiful wisdom. It anyway seems that you're still very lacking. Even a small random can be dangerous enough to kill someone. And what happened to Yi Gu Han is a great example of that. It's okay to be stupid on your own. However, you should never involve anyone else in it. Especially those close to you. Jun Moxie roared. Then, Jun Moxie stopped raining curses. His spittle was everywhere. Though, his heart was content. He had gone about scolding a princess and the daughters of big families like he was lecturing his grandson. But, it's like you just said that, we are Gold Xian level, far from the Sky Xian level. Moreover, we had to resolve everything despite that huge and unconquerable difference in our strengths. And we could only depend on ourselves. So how could I do it? Sun Xiaomei snorted as she pointed at his nose. She had straightened her neck and had shot back, somewhat resentfully. This little girl wasn't like the princess and Xiao Yi. She was very proud. Therefore, she argued back. You think strength falls out of the sky? A snorting sound came from Jun Moxie's nose. Don't you dress up and adorn yourself every day instead of training for your tyrannical strength? Do you think you can have an exceptional strength when you treat yourself like a delicate flower vase and remain protected? Do you know the cost of becoming a genuine expert? A really strong individual? That is obviously something which you young ladies will not be aware of. One should put all his life and soul into attaining even the most ordinary understanding. Jun Moxie smiled. You're very young. Yet you're already gold Xian experts. In fact, you can even be considered extraordinary talents amongst the younger generation. Many people will consider your feat of reaching the gold Xian level at such a young age as a remarkable one. And I'll admit that it's true. The cultivation of Xian Qi is against the natural order of things. And to walk this troublesome path means to expend a lot of wealth and energy. And the most important part is to give up on world. You'll be in conflict with your body every day. However, you're at the best age throughout a woman's lifetime. There have always been many talented women in existence. However, only the women who gave up on their good looks and youthfulness and were successful in becoming unrivaled experts. They are few and far in between all these years from the ancient times to now. I say these things to ensure that you don't make stupid mistakes like you did today. Your strength is weak. And I'm certain that an incident like today will happen again. But I'm sure that no one wants Yi Gu Han's sacrifice to become worthless. Do you understand my words? Jun Moxie hummed for a while. He had lost interest in venting his feelings. Jun Moxie walked over to the chair and leaned into it. Then, he closed his eyes. He then said impatiently, "Don't dispute the truth I say to you. It's useless. It might do some good if you're confident that you can use that bullshit logic to convince the enemy. If not, then shut up. This young Masters has been working hard for too long. He needs to rest." The three women were flushed with anger at first. Then, they realized that Jun Moxie's words were very reasonable even though they were extremely difficult to hear. They couldn't help but hang their heads and ponder on his words. Dugu Xiao Yi drummed her mouth and turned. She then snorted and gave a supercilious look. She wrinkled her nose and mumbled, "You're so unreasonable. Whenever I get irritated, I take that knife out, it feels like I'm looking at you." Then suddenly, they heard the sound of heavy footsteps coming from outside. At first, it seemed that a monster the size of an elephant was wildly stomping towards their direction. The speed of its progress was scary. It was not scarily fast, it was scarily slow. The three women looked at each other. They gasped. Then, they heard a voice calling from outside. "I say, young master, you deliberately made me run on my broken leg. Poor me. I must have sweated around 5 kilograms on this journey. What was so important that you demanded these medicines so urgently? Moreover, why was it necessary that I bring them over personally? I deserve a special treat for this. Let's go to the Spirit Fog Lake this afternoon." TCH, just think of those powdered and delicate women, brother. My mouth slobbers at the thought of them. I'll wish to seek out several of them, and then I'll try your, if you don't pay for it. You don't but it, trick. Indeed, the young master is a true genius. This little brother admires you. He bows in front of you. It goes without saying who the new arrival was. The color of the faces of the women inside the room changed into that of a boiler's base. It was dark and scary. The three women's face showed the same intention in unison: murder. It was a very oppressive intention. The Tang family's young master dragged his huge belly to the door's threshold as he panted. It was accompanied with the sounds of complaints and flattery. He then passed gas very loudly. He could barely hold up his stomach with his hands as he finally stepped in. Suddenly, he was shocked to see the three young women staring fierily at him. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and let his belly go. Then, he looked around the place in a distracted manner and let out a blood-curdling scream. Ah! He let go of the medicines and spilled them on the ground. Then, he quickly broke into a run and left. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 272. The Cold-Blooded Master. The three women agreed to catch Fatty Tang and then nimbly pounced at him. Tang Yuan's speed was no match for the three women. Sun Xiao Mei grabbed him by his ear and dragged him back. Fatty Tang continuously begged for mercy as he endured the maltreatment. All right, Fatty Tang. You're trying to entice the young Master Jun into going to that forsaken place with you. I'll whip that fat grease off your body today. How dare you even mention those girls? Sun Xiao Mei took the lead as the three women started raining curses at Fatty Tang. They even stomped on him, right in front of Jun Moxie. Each of them had accumulated a bellyful of anger. The fatty had then arrived at the crucial moment. He was practically a ready-made punching bag for them to vent out their rage on. It would have been a waste if they didn't use him for his designated purpose. Especially when they even had a just and reasonable cause to exploit. Tears and snot ran down his fat face, his fat body, his chubby face and his plump hands. He lost count of how many times he was punched. And his face had turned from white to green, to purple and then black in an instant. He let out an earth-shattering scream. Fatty unceasingly requested Jun Moxie to have pity on him and save his little brother from that fiery cauldron. However, he received no reply. Putting Fatty Tang right apparently required a lot of effort. The three women were left panting. They stopped when they recalled that the main culprit was sitting at the side. They realized that they had merely grasped the opportunity to let out all their pent-up angst. Tang Yuan also got up. He then continued to complain for a while. Jun Moxie, I didn't expect you. The three women suddenly shut up. This resulted in a complete silence throughout the room. The place where the young Master Jun had been sitting was empty. The four people foolishly looked for Jun Moxie in the room. They hadn't realized when the young Master Jun had disappeared. Even the herbal medicines which had fallen down were gone. His actions had been lightning fast. Grandpa Tang received news from the palace his eldest grandson, Tang Yuan, was to go there the next morning and have an audience with the emperor. Tang Wanli was unaware why his grandson had been called, but it was extremely difficult to reject the emperor's command. Therefore, he sent someone to the Jun residence to bring the once expelled grandson home. The young Master Tang was covered in dirt by then. However, he thanked the gods in heaven for breaking him away from the sea of misery he was in. He quickly escaped that place in disarray. In fact, he didn't even change his clothes. He had never felt so much affection for his grandfather. His grandfather had rescued him from such hardships. His grandpa had become a god in his eyes. The sky slowly grew dark as time progressed. Lights had started to flicker in the Jun family's courtyard. A banquet had been arranged in the anteroom in honor of the noble guests Dugu Wudi and Minister Sun. This banquet was of a very high standard. Grandpa Jun and Jun Wu Yi were personally accompanying the guests. However, Jun Moxie had vanished like the smoke. The three women had been gnashing their teeth. Their bellies were burning with their anger, and they desperately wanted to settle the scores. Jun Moxie sneakily emerged from the Hongjun pagoda late at night. Everyone had gone off to sleep by then. He glanced left and right, and then proceeded towards his bedroom. This is a joke. I wasn't hiding from those 3 silly girls. Why should I be afraid of them? I hid, only to prepare a prescription for Yi Guhan. That's all. Saving people is like putting out a fire. How could I've delayed it? And this medicine took a bit of time. These people surely must have needed to rest by now. It's nothing to make a fuss about. Jun Moxie comforted himself with the anesthetics he had prepared in the past half a day. One medicine was to be taken orally, and another was to be applied externally. Jun Moxie proceeded into his bedroom and began treating Yi Guhan's injured bones. It took a lot of effort, but the broken rib bones in Yi Guhan's chest cavity were brought together like embroidery. They had been completely brought under control by the time he was finished. Young Master Jun's clothes had been drenched in sweat. He was very tired and couldn't bear to sit on his backside anymore. He shook his head and muttered, "My own mother didn't work so hard for me. The next time I have to work like this, I'll die before I do it. This effort has half killed me." Suddenly, Jun Moxie felt a very mysterious aura gushing around him. He felt the hair on his body stand up. The air itself had become scant and had started to fill with a vicious and murderous aura. The atmosphere felt extremely cold. Jun Moxie quickly looked up. He shivered when he saw an astonishing spiritual aura scattering around the air. The earth-shattering and frantic aura quickly rose over the Tianxiang city. It then erupted. It had soon covered about of 5 kilometers. This aura was filled with endless fury and pain. Yes, pain. It was faintly discernible. But anyone who felt it could sense that the person disseminating this aura was extremely sad. This was a very genuine feeling. Jun Moxie could confirm that the person dispensing that aura was a top-level expert and had surpassed all competition. However, Hitman Jun considered this man to be second to himself. However, this man seemed even stronger than the solitary falcon and Shi Changxiao. A very powerful person had fallen into extreme rage and sadness. Jun Moxie nervously started to ponder. He couldn't tell what was happening. Suddenly, a thunderous and cold voice echoed in the sky and broke the silence of the night. It then rolled across the city like a tsunami. "Solitary falcon. Wen Sang Yu. Come and face me, you two be asterisk stards." Suddenly, a long, desolate and indignant cry rang out from the sky. And it startled everyone. Many commoners lived in the capital below. However, the voice that had echoed didn't seem to have any apprehensions. Moreover, there was no need to have any misgivings this late at night. Therefore, the person had shouted out loudly by putting his entire body's mysterious aura into circulation. The imposing manner of the call was sufficient enough to shock all creatures on this land under the heavens. The long howl continued to echo. It seemed like the roar of a dragon. It shook the surrounding land as Tianxiang city reverberated with it. It continued to linger, though not for much longer. The sound seemed unhurried yet earth-shattering. It seemed like the rivers had flowed backwards, and the countless people sailing it had roared in unison. Everyone was woken from their sleep. Even those sleeping deeply weren't an exception. No one was able to hear anything else since their ears were full of that reverberating voice. A thin, black-clad man stood on the roof of the magnificent jewel hall. His roaring voice was full of grief and anger. And a strong, destructive, and tyrannical murderous aura. "You have the guts to kill my disciples. Do you not have the guts to face me? Solitary falcon. Wen Sang Yu. Are you dead yet? Don't you dare act like cowards." The black-clothed man let out a more powerful cry this time. Many people who were nearby were left hearing impaired after they heard this roar. Their ears were covered with blood in an instant. It seemed as if their ears had ruptured because of this loud sound. The two distinctive roars were heard, one from the imperial palace, and the other from the Jun residence. These three roars reverberated through the sky and collided against each other. Suddenly, the pressure of the previous roars started to pacify. Bang! A huge bird-like figure appeared over Jun Wuyi's small courtyard and suddenly took flight. It let out a loud and unending roar as it soared upwards. He rose over 30 meters in the sky, and then spiraled in the sky like an eagle that was rising to the 9th level of the heaven. Then, he turned in the direction of the magnificent jewel hall and flew towards it. Cold-blooded Master Lei Wu Bei. You have finally arrived. You brat. I've been waiting for you a while. Solitary Falcon laughed loudly as he flew like a meteor. I see that this cold-blooded beast has arrived. But why has the 5th-ranked master of the 8 supreme masters come here? Another uninterrupted roar could be heard as well. It was resonating from the imperial palace. Senior Lei and Senior Falcon, you have arrived. Your little brother Wen Songyu welcomes you both. Wen Songyu was Mr. Wen from the imperial palace. His voice was exceptionally abnormal. It was very gentle and didn't seem hurried. It was apparently emitted without any effort. However, his gentle voice somehow was able to compete with the fierce voices of his two seniors. It was clearly audible and didn't seem subdued by theirs. It was evident that Mr. Wen wasn't as strong as the two masters, but he was definitely close to them in terms of his Xian level. The three men stood on the roof of the magnificent jewel hall. The innumerable stars glittered in the heavens above them. The wind screamed through the crisscrossing streets between the houses. The robes of all the three men fluttered violently in the wind. It seemed like a deity from the 9th level of heaven had descended upon the mortal world. Surprisingly, the cold-blooded Master Lei Wu Bei had personally arrived. It was a sight to see. This old man had 10 disciples in total. 4 of them were dead, 3 of them were disabled beyond healing, and the remaining had been injured, and hadn't yet recovered. The old man had gone mad with rage after he had seen this. It would have been a good bargain if they had killed their imperial target. But they hadn't. Hence, he had rushed over to see things through. Hitman Jun knew that Lei Wu Bei was a peerless cold-blooded master. However, Jun Moxie didn't feel any fear in his heart when he heard his voice. Instead, he quickly activated the yin-yang escape and tailed behind Solitary Falcon. In fact, he followed him rather closely. He didn't pull back a single step. Jun Wuyi walked to Jun Moxie's room with difficulty. His blue robes were fluttering in the wind. However, he only found Yi Guhan there. There was no one else in that room. Jun Wuyi couldn't help but smile. His nephew's methods surely surpassed the heavens. However, his courage was as impressive. Lei Wu Bei's stature was tall. The sky hadn't lit up yet, and the stars still glittered. The earth was completely dark in contrast. However, Lei Wu Bei's eyes shone through that darkness with a cold, merciless light. But if one would examine him carefully, they would see that his eyes were brimming with an incompressible sorrow. He had the reputation of being the most cold-blooded master. However, 3 of his 10 disciples had been permanently disabled, while 4 had been killed. This was a huge blow to the powerful cold-blooded expert. And it was something he could not excuse. Perhaps no one could ever excuse this. Lei Wu Bei had trained 10 Sky Xian experts simultaneously. It was considered an enormous achievement. Moreover, it was something that none of the other great masters could boast of. However, he had lost 2/3 of his original 10 disciples within a month. Even if their cultivation wasn't at the Sky Xian level, he wouldn't have been able to make peace with it. The young Master Jun had closely followed behind Solitary Falcon. However, he was in no mood to understand Lei Wubei's grief and anger. But he found himself witnessing a very fascinating phenomenon. Or maybe it could be called a wonderful feeling. Moreover, this was something he had noticed whenever he had run into the top experts of this world. Shi Changxiao, the Solitary Falcon, Lei Wubei, Yutang Empire's imperial teacher Fei Mengchen, the three spirit Xian elders of the Silver Blizzard City, Mr. Wen, and even the two king beasts of the Tian Fa forest. Though it wasn't very obvious for Mr. Wen, but looking at the people from the Solitary Falcon's strength and onwards, it could be noticed that these supreme experts had one characteristic that was common between them. They were all lonely. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 273. A Supreme Master's Rage. That's right. Lonely. It seemed that no matter where they stood and no matter how many people they had standing beside them, they were always very lonely. They were incompatible with their surroundings. It seemed that they were alone in the scope of this boundless heaven and earth. Such loneliness was indeed heroic. Yet, there was a sense of desolation to it. Was this the price one had to pay to become a peerless master? Or was this what they call being lonely at the top? If one reaches their level, would one also be lonely like them? However, I am convinced that if I'm to talk about loneliness, I've reached greater heights than them. Jun Moxie snorted coldly. I can't compare with you in terms of strength, but I'm far lonelier than you. Jun Moxie pondered deeply for a while. Then, he suddenly saw a couple of shadows. Two more people climbed onto the roof. Their white beards were floating in the wind, and their expressions were dignified. The new arrivals were none other than the Silver Blizzard City's 3rd and 9th elders. The two seniors honor us with their presence. It's a pleasure to have Elder Brother Wen in our company. My Silver Blizzard City is truly honored. Why don't we all go down and have some tea? Third elder cupped his hands and smiled. He could see that the three men had their daggers drawn against each other. He knew his words weren't suited for this environment. However, he still requested them to follow him into the magnificent Jewel Hall. No one would wish to lose the Silver Blizzard City's favor. Therefore, he put on a brave face and invited them in. Lei Wubei was very sad. He gave a long smile, but then ignored the third elder's request. He then shouted, "Solitary Falcon! My 6th disciple suffered serious fractures and torn tendons. He has been disabled for life. Why did you do it?" The third elder's face was filled with embarrassment. His strength wasn't comparable, but he was the Silver Blizzard City representative. Lei Wubei's attitude had made the third elder very angry. However, he kept his rage at bay since he could see Lei Wubei's obvious sorrow and somewhat crazed expression. Solitary Falcon laughed in an understated manner. "Why are you so angry, Elder Brother Lei? He was just a disciple. This old man did him a favor and taught him a lesson in your stead. You have 10 disciples. One getting crippled shouldn't matter that much. And he was the only one amongst your disciples who hadn't reached the Sky Xian realm yet. I removed the garbage that plagued your name. I've taken out the trash for you. I avoided you so much embarrassment." Ha ha ha. Ferocious qi arose within Lei Wubei's body. There seemed to be an invisible undercurrent in his body, and it was slowly rising up. He stared at Solitary Falcon. His eyes showed an endless increase in murderous intentions. He nodded slowly, and then said in a deep voice, Well, very well. Solitary falcon. You're not worthy of calling yourself a teacher of the senior generation. You attacked a member of the younger generation. You must be ashamed of yourself. Solitary falcon snorted and looked at Lei Wu Bei with disdain. He sneered. What? Are you going to avenge your disciple? Then come on, Lei Wu Bei. I've waited 30 years for this opportunity. I've long felt that the rankings are wrong. Lei Wu Bei repressed his emotions and smiled. I'm not exactly worried about it. Solitary falcon. What I'm really interested to know is, how had my disciple offended you? What made you do this evil deed despite being aware of his identity? Solitary falcon replied coldly. Could he dare to offend me? He just wasn't pleasing to my eyes. Will this reason suffice? Lei Wu Bei? The solitary falcon, Shi Chang Xiao and others had been fighting over the Xian core. Lei Wu Bei's sixth disciple had snuck in an attempt to steal the Xian core from the solitary falcon. And he had almost succeeded. This had caused immense embarrassment for the solitary falcon. However, how could he admit it now? Moreover, there was no way the solitary falcon would ever explain anything to the cold-blooded master, especially given the arrogant tone in which Lei Wu Bei had asked him the question. The proud master would never bow his head. Who was right and who was wrong? Strength was the only truth in this world. This is a good reason. A very good one. Solitary falcon. I'll remember this reason. Lei Wu Bei laughed heartily. He then changed the direction of his gaze and spoke to Wen Songyu in a dignified voice. Elder brother Wen, you are here? You're staying at Tianxiang City? Wen Kenyu smiled gently. Master Lei is very perceptive. Wen has arrived to protect the sacred contract with the Empire. Lei Wu Bei closed his eyes. His eyes somewhat twinkled and became gloomy. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes. And they started to emit a burst of cold, poisonous and a miserable green-colored light. It felt as if there was an evil and unsettling wind around them. This wind seemed to screaming the agony of his heart. He spoke in an incomparably cold manner. Elder brother Wen Songyu, protecting the treaty is not a proper justification for killing 4 of my disciples. Guarding the treaty doesn't mean you can act unscrupulously. Wen Songyu looked up to the sky and let out a faint sigh. A trace of anger flit across his face. Lei Wu Bei wasn't in a position to distinguish between good and evil. Moreover, he was acting in a forceful and somewhat unreasonable manner. However, Mr. Wen remembered his duty. He took a deep breath and somehow managed to restrain his anger. He pondered for a while and then lowered his head. He then looked at Lei Wu Bei indifferently. Master Lei, I did not kill your disciples. Wen Songyu's voice sank. I have to address Master Lei since you've questioned and ridiculed. But I will only explain this to you once. Whether you believe it or not, or accept it or not. Lei Wu Bei remained silent for a while. He then replied coldly. When elder brother Wen says it like that, how can I not believe you? His voice was still cold, but the murderous tinge in it seemed to have reduced. His voice then became gentle. If elder brother Wen tells me, he can leave any time. But then who killed my disciples? Can you tell me, elder brother Wen? If elder brother is willing to accept my questions and tells me the truth, then Lei Wu Bei would offer apologies for his conduct. Lei Wu Bei removed his hands from his sleeves and kept them at his side in a gesture of friendship. Lei Wu Bei was a supreme master. His disciples had been slaughtered. Yet, he was speaking in a very dignified manner and was willing to listen to logic. It would be considered very commendable even if the opposite party was a spirit Xian expert like himself. That man's origins and strength are quite mysterious. Mr. Wen is also very interested in him. It is such a pity that this is so muddled and confusing. So much so that Wen is convinced that he shifted the blame to me. A short yet bright burst of a smile spread across Wen Songyu's face. He didn't seem ashamed. His smile was like a cloud in the face of insipid wind. It seemed as if the matter was frivolous and unimportant. And now I see Master Lei has personally set out to find that person. But Wen is helpless, and willingly concedes defeat. You have my many thanks for this, elder brother Wen. Lei Wubei's eyes flashed with a cold light as he cupped his hands. Do as you wish, elder brother Wen. Many apologies for today's matter. Wen Songyu laughed and cupped his hands in return. That's very noble of you. I hope to see you again. Wen has some pressing duties. So kindly forgive me. He cupped his hands again. And then, he was swept away like a dead leaf in the strong wind. He flew up to the sky. His slim body seemed to resemble a piece of parchment. He swayed in the air for a while, and then vanished without a trace. Young Master Jun had been watching in secrecy. He couldn't help but curse in his heart endlessly. This senior's explanation was so plain. He merely said that it was a misunderstanding. Wasn't this too easy? And how did the cold-blooded Master Lei Wubei get convinced so easily? The other person merely told him that he hadn't done it. And surprisingly, this fifth-ranking master of the 8 great master was convinced by it? Is Mr. Wen incapable of telling lies? Or is he too good at swindling? I'm genuinely speechless. Jun Moxie understood one thing as he cursed in his heart: people at such levels of cultivation didn't have a need to lie. It was unlikely that they'd be afraid of anything after having reached such a level. However, this explanation still seemed strange. That explanation shouldn't have cut it even if it were a misunderstanding. That explanation was too weak. The solitary falcon's attitude wasn't very different either. Lei Wubei had genuinely believed Wen Songyu's explanation. Moreover, the cold-blooded master's attitude towards him was entirely different. It seemed as if Lei Wubei had no option but to agree with Wen Songyu even if he didn't give a proper explanation. And it seemed as this had something to do with Wen Songyu's identity. Mr. Wen's Xian level was lesser than Lei Wubei's. However, it seemed that the man had only given an explanation since he didn't wish to disrespect the cold-blooded master. Is that man from that place? Jun Moxie's attention shifted to those words as he pondered inside. But where is that place? How did Lei Wubei, a member of the 8 great masters, seem fearful of him? Is there something fishy between them? Lei Wubei then turned towards the solitary falcon. He withdrew his hands and snorted coldly. Now it's only the 2 of us. Solitary falcon. Then, he suddenly swung his sleeves in anger towards the 3rd and the 9th elders. He then shouted, "This matter doesn't concern you. The Silver Blizzard City doesn't have any qualifications to get involved in this matter." It seemed as if a strong wind had screamed at them. The 3rd and the 9th elders were left in pain. They were extremely angry at this. But the other person was far stronger. Therefore, they had no choice but to cup their hands, jump into the gale and disappear. However, their minds were singing a different tune. Let's see if you dare to act so arrogant when more people from our Silver City arrive. Solitary Falcon laughed. His tall body rose up in the air like an eagle as he sneered. You had a good relationship with your disciple. So, you wish to avenge him? Follow me. Lei Wubei screamed. It seemed like 1,000 ghosts were escaping from the gates of hell. His body slowly rose into the air. He followed the solitary falcon closely, and then vanished with him in a blink of an eye. The Milky Way lit up the night like a cold and starry river. Jun Moxie activated the yin-yang escape and followed after them. He couldn't help but admit that the master's strength was in a league of its own. Jun Moxie had activated the highest level of the yin-yang escape. Yet, it was very strenuous for him to keep up with them. Jun Moxie was an expert in tailing stealthily. He was convinced that no one in the Tianxiang city would have been as successful in his place. And that included the mysterious Mr. Wen. Solitary Falcon's bird-like movements were the fastest in the Xian continent. Moreover, Solitary Falcon was confident that he was one of the strongest amongst the 8 great masters. Therefore, he employed his full strength to show his authority to Lei Wubei. Lei Wubei obviously didn't dare to neglect this. Hence, the two individuals promptly began a competition of swiftness. The two men had merely exchanged a battle of words after they had met. However, they had reached the threshold of such a fierce competition. The coiling sounds of their roars seemed to have been the first round. However, it had appeared that the Solitary Falcon's cultivation was a bit lacking in that regard. But it seemed that speed was the second round of their competition. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 274. Intentionally stirring up some trouble. Therefore, Solitary Falcon and Lei Wubei hurried with great speed towards the battlefield. They were putting forth all of their efforts for the fear of losing face. The Solitary Falcon's Xian Qi had even started to produce sound waves as he flew. Speed had always been his domain of excellence. He couldn't allow Lei Wubei to beat him. Lei Wubei had come to avenge his disciples. Hence, he couldn't allow his strength to be looked down upon. Therefore, he was chasing after the Solitary Falcon in full force. From this perspective, Jun Moxie's yin-yang escape was worthy of being called formidable and astonishing. However, its efficacy was still very shallow. He had yet to unlock the mysteries of the yin-yang escape. So how could he compete with those two powerful masters yet? However, he was able to keep up with those two supreme masters. This was a world-shaking and astonishing fact given his age and cultivation level. The two men's shadows flickered back to back like a falling meteorite. They crossed from house to house, and were soon outside the city. They then disappeared into the vast open lands. The city couldn't be considered small since millions of people lived in it. However, these two masters had crossed over from the center of the city in a few breaths. Jun Moxie reckoned that even an F-4 fighter aircraft from his previous life couldn't match this speed. Young Master Jun felt a little dispirited as he saw the two men disappear from his line of sight. The people he was following had managed to evade him. This was the first time in his life that something like this had happened to him. He couldn't help but force a smile as he raised his eyes. Indeed, it must be fate. I had come here in the evening today, and had barely plucked myself from a hugely troubling incident. And now I'm here once again, in the middle of the night. Does this place have a relation with me? Jun Moxie looked around to confirm this inference. This place was an uninhabited countryside. It was surrounded by dense and misty forests. It was well suited to kill someone. He stood on a treetop. The wind caressed him as it slowly whistled by. Jun Moxie felt content for a while. In fact, he even felt heroic. He was almost unable to stop himself from singing. To wear a dress and to step across the snow-covered forest, oh anger to dash like water, oh ee. This loud singing voice never left his throat though. Suddenly, two loud blasts burst from the middle of the jungle. They submerged that part of the forest like a tsunami. Its waves were as imposing as mountains. I thought those two old fools had gone far away. But it seems like they've started fighting somewhere nearby. It seems that this territory not only appealed to me, but them as well. What a great area! Countless trees were forcefully tilted in the opposite direction. The area resounded with snapping sounds. It seemed that the trunks of the trees would break at any second. He had been standing on a treetop, and had felt very pleasant in this atmosphere. In fact, he was on the verge of breaking into a song. But the young Master Jun suddenly swayed and came down. He then cursed inwardly. These old B***stards don't have any appeal. Don't they know that fighting requires grace? Then he silently looked towards the inner part of the forest. An opportunity to watch a fight between such masters was very rare. Solitary Falcon and Lei Wubei stood opposite each other in the middle of the jungle. They were about 30 meters apart. The ground between the two men had become exceptionally smooth. There had been a huge tree there just moments ago. However, it silently disintegrated and disappeared forever because of the explosion caused by their colliding xian qi. At present that space seemed smoother than a basketball court's floor from his previous life. Such amazing craftsmanship. How come these two beasts don't repair roads? They ought to go to remote mountainous areas and build roads. This is even smoother than the work of a road roller. And it's far more convenient. This road is so smooth that it could be used for speed racing. It's such a waste that no one will be able to make proper use of their craftsmanship in this area. An invisible field of chi spread out between the two fighters. The back of Solitary Falcon's head was covered with disheveled hair. His hair seemed to lift as if they were drifting in the wind. Lei Wubei stood opposite to him. However, he didn't move a single inch. Even the hem of his clothes didn't sway. The two men had judged whose cultivation was relatively superior. Falcon, your cultivation has progressed significantly over these years. Lei Wubei snorted coldly. I can't compete with you in speed, but your xian level falls far behind mine. You'll have to be honest in front of me. Is that so? Not necessarily. Solitary Falcon suddenly jumped high and soared into the air. He was like a high-pressure spring which had suddenly rebounded. His entire body was like a javelin that had been thrust straight into the sky. The xian qi of the imposing Master Solitary Falcon was a bit lacking. It would have been difficult for him to continue if he were to maintain his position. Moreover, he would have been too powerless to save himself had he fallen into Lei Wubei's field of qi. Therefore, the Solitary Falcon had made a prompt decision and had shot up. He had broken through Lei Wubei's qi barrier in the process. The Solitary Falcon held the last position amongst the 8 great masters. His xian qi was also at the lowest level amongst those masters. This was a well-known fact. In fact, he probably wouldn't have been deserving of the title of a great master if he were to foolishly entangle himself against one of the mightier ones. Each has their own strengths. And Master Falcon's strongest advantage had never been a powerful xian qi. This high jump had broken past Solitary Falcon's original limit. He had jumped to over 70 meters. He looked like an indistinct dot in the night sky. Lei Wubei snorted coldly as a brilliant light flashed in his eyes. He started spinning on his toes, and his body suddenly became similar to a spinning top. Then suddenly, a tornado started to appear around him. It was made up of a completely shiny black strange qi. The surrounding trees, the grass and the soil started to roll up with this tornado. As its range got larger and larger, its power also increased. A sharp, incisive and ear-rupturing howl echoed in the sky. The mournful and shrill howl came down like lightning. Bang! 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 The sound of a sonic boom echoed from the sky as the solitary falcon reached the limit of his speed. The friction between his body, his clothes, and the atmosphere rent the air. This had given rise to such a loud sound. The solitary falcon extended his right hand into a claw as he moved his left to his shoulder. The man himself was descending from the sky, but his long shining hair was perpendicular to the ground. The solitary falcon resembled a devilish god of war as he emitted a fearsome arrow made of wind. He screamed loudly as he let it loose towards Lei Wubei. "Good! Come!" Lei Wubei shouted coldly. The tornado around him rose steeply from the ground to meet the strong black figure in the sky. Soon the two came into contact. This resulted in a loud, blasting sound. The two powerful forces disappeared in the blink of an eye. They left no trace. The solitary falcon stood in front of Lei Wubei again. His claws transformed in an ever-changing manner as he snatched at his opponent. Lei Wubei let out a ruthless howl. His palms were covered in black qi. He welcomed his opponent's attack with no trace of fear in his eyes. The hands of the two men clashed several hundred times in an instant. Then, suddenly there was a loud bang. Lei Wubei's body flew away, while the solitary falcon stumbled back due to the recoil. This flying retreat had created a distance of over 30 meters between the two men. There had been an intense explosion at the place where these two forces had clashed. The two men were thrown into a retreat. Jun Moxie had been hiding over 60 meters away. However, the waves of the aftermath of the explosion had reached him. In fact, the tree he stood on had snapped under the effect of the explosion. It was a huge and astonishing explosion. Hitman Jun had been observing this decisive battle between those two powerful great masters with keen interest. Moreover, these were the top fighters of this world. And he had been comparing them to the ones from his previous life. He felt that he could learn a lot by observing from the sidelines. That could help him in becoming more powerful. He had just figured out another hiding place when that tree broke. But it broke into more than 10 pieces. Jun Moxie was suddenly flung to the ground. He fell hard and rolled for a while. It was a sudden incident, and he didn't get enough time to recover. Moreover, he couldn't help but let out a low groan since it happened so suddenly. This groan was indeed extremely low in volume. However, that sound was like a thunderclap to the two great masters. Someone had been spying on them, and the two of them had been shockingly unaware of his presence. The two men couldn't help but shout in unison, "Who's there? Come out and show yourself." The young Master Jun didn't dare to. He withdrew his neck and escaped into the woods. He moved on to another tree as he studied the contest between the two men in his mind. He could determine who the relatively superior man was. The fight had just started. But he could see that the solitary falcon was no match for Lei Wubei. "I'm afraid I'll have to suffer if he loses." This was like a fight between two extremely rich men. One was fighting with 1 billion, while the other was fighting with 1.5 billion. These two men were filthy rich from this world's standard of strength. They had spent enough. But as much as they liked it, they were still squandering their money. However, the one with the 1.5 billion would win if both sides fought to the end. After all, he was better off. However, the falcon is on my side. Do I just look on helplessly as he gets humiliated? Ah, I guess I'll give them a little trouble. Jun Moxie suddenly thought of a plan. He snorted coldly. His voice was full of disdain. He then moved again. The two figures suddenly moved on to the place from where he had groaned in a fraction of a second. However, Yin Yang's escape was wondrous. He could hide right in front of the eyes of the two masters. The two great masters thoroughly searched the area. They looked at each other in dismay since they were unable to find him. The two men were extremely shocked. How could someone infiltrate so close to them? That too right in front of their very eyes. This man's Xian level was in no way under theirs. His Xian level might even be superior to theirs. Who is this man? What is his purpose? Just then, someone snorted coldly. It seemed as if this person was looking down upon them. Who would be so arrogant? Solitary Falcon suddenly came to himself. He then cursed. Lei Wu Bei, you're extremely shameless. You came with a helper. I am disgusted with you. This is your manner of conduct? And yet you call yourself one of the 8 great masters. Shut your nonsense. Lei Wu Bei was very angry. I can deal with you on my own. Why would I need a helper? This is a joke. This man's your helper. Right? Falcon, stop crying, thief, when you're the one going about committing robberies. I'm going to teach you a lesson. The two men cursed each other. But they were inwardly alert. One may have been superior to the other, but his superiority was very limited. However, their respective opponent could easily turn the tide in his own favor if the man had someone with a decent strength as an aid. Therefore, both the men quickly came up with the thought to end the fight then and there. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 275. I will seek to avenge. Even if you do have a helper, what do I have to fear? Solitary Eagle laughed mischievously. He snorted as his hands turned into bright claws like those of a falcon. Lei Wu Bei, your Xian cultivation is indeed slightly better than mine. And I admit this. However, winning a battle doesn't solely depend on the level of Xian Qi. But it's your lucky day today because I'll teach you an important lesson. This old man has come up with an exceptional move. My move will make the 5th great master eat dirt. Ha ha. Solitary Eagle's body accelerated and became very erratic as he burst into laughter. His body had suddenly taken the shape of a demonic and ghostly bird. The entire realm under the firmament seemed to be screeching as his claws came together in a crisscross shape. This move had given rise to a strong gale. His claws formed a large network of airtight angle which could seemingly penetrate through any angle. If this bird was supposedly a falcon, then it appeared as if the ghost of a falcon had launched an attack. The 9 claws of the ghostly falcon. An excellent falcon claw. Lei Wu Bei suddenly shouted in praise. He had never seen anything like this before. This move had attracted all his attention. His brain even forgot to counterattack. Chi chi chi. Lei Wu Bei had never seen such a fantastic martial arts move before. This move had left him at a complete loss. Solitary Falcon's claws inflicted 3 cuts on Lei Wu Bei's body. However, Lei Wu Bei didn't get frightened, even though he wasn't prepared to face this attack. He calmly retreated a few steps. Solitary Falcon howled as he gained the upper hand. Then, he unleashed the second move. The Supreme Master Solitary Falcon had only been able to learn the first 2 steps of the 9 claws of the ghostly falcon. His confidence increased when the first step showed results. Hence, he decided to strike with the second move while the iron was still hot. Bang! 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 The sounds of explosion emanated from Lei Wu Bei's body. He then let out a fierce roar and started to accumulate an exceeding amount of Xian Qi in his body. The Xian Qi started to surge like a tsunami. Lei Wu Bei was the 5th great master. He couldn't allow himself to get pushed to such a state while fighting the solitary falcon. He made no attempts to hold back as he unleashed his cold-blooded finger. There was a loud explosion and the two men stumbled back in recoil. Lei Wubei was extremely shocked when he looked at his chest and saw 5 bloody palm prints. Then, he looked up. What is the name of this remarkable falcon claw technique? How many steps are there? Solitary Falcon's face was flushed, and his chest was heaving rapidly. He answered coldly, "How did my new technique taste? Ha! It's called the 9 claws of the ghostly falcon. As the name implies, it has 9 steps. How did you like your lesson? Ha! 9 steps? So this wonderful move has 9 steps. The 9 claws of the ghostly falcon? It is worthy of the name, ghostly falcon." Lei Wubei groaned in a depressed manner. He then added, "Solitary falcon. You're different from before. This old man has no interest in dawdling with you today. So I am dropping this matter for the time being. But I'll find you whenever I want." Solitary Falcon laughed heartily. "You can seek out your senior whenever you wish to taste his new and unique skills." Solitary Falcon. We're both called the 8 Great Masters. So I shall give you a warning. Stay away from the Jun family. Lei Wubei snorted. The Jun family has provoked 2 powerful entities. And now they've added this old man to that list as well. It seems that it will be necessary to take action against them. This old man doesn't wish to see you there when he annihilates their entire family. Otherwise, I doubt I will let you off either. Annihilate the Jun family? How? Solitary Falcon snorted coldly. Why should the Solitary Falcon listen to this nonsense when he can sort Lei Wubei out easily? And you wouldn't be delaying this matter if you could contend against my 9 claws of the ghostly falcon. You don't know how to regret. You always act so recklessly. Lei Wubei snorted as he hung his head. Then, his body rose up and suddenly vanished. Lei Wubei had decided to act when he saw the peculiarity of the situation. The Solitary Falcon's 9 claws of the ghostly falcon was a very strange and unpredictable move. Moreover, each step was more powerful than the previous one. He felt extremely threatened by this move. He didn't have the confidence of emerging victorious like he previously did. Moreover, the lowest-ranked Great Master was known for his speed. Therefore, it would have been very hard for Lei Wubei to escape if the Solitary Falcon had a powerful aid in support. Therefore, Lei Wubei made a prompt decision and escaped. The Solitary Falcon was silent for a while. He then sighed. Well, that was a close call. His opponent was ranked 5th amongst the Great 8 Masters for a reason. It would seem that both the fighters had done equally well in this battle. However, the Solitary Falcon was aware that he would have lost. His 9 claws of the ghostly falcon had admittedly been very fruitful. However, he would have undoubtedly been in a difficult situation once the opponent increased his power output as the fight progressed. He was already scraping the bottom of his trunk of tricks, and had nearly exhausted them. However, his opponent had just begun to unleash his cold-blooded finger. The second step of his unique 9 claws of the ghostly falcon had dominated for a short while. Nothing more. Further, there had been a mysterious occurrence. The 2 men had searched throughout the periphery, but hadn't been able to find any trace of this spectator's presence. The 2 men had lost the zeal to fight after that incident. They feared that a fisherman would catch both the fighting fish. And the fisherman had a great advantage in this situation. This fact could not be guarded against. In case the 2 men were to sustain serious injuries during the battle, the third party could swoop in and clinch the victory. He could attack and kill both the Great Masters. How could he possibly attempt something that crazy? Who was this extremely mysterious person? Therefore, the two men thought of the same thing and gave up on the fight. I'm afraid I would have been humiliated if I hadn't practiced this ghostly falcon's claw move. My recent comprehension of the second step was especially pivotal. Lei Wu Bei is far stronger than me. He is truly worthy of being called the most cold-blooded master. I am thankful to the man who made that noise, regardless of the intentions he may have harbored. It seemed that he needed to learn more about the 9 claws of the ghostly falcon. It was imperative that he quickly master that move without delay. The solitary falcon sighed, and then quickly left. The young master Jun had departed before the two great masters. Jun Moxie was bursting with anger at that moment. Hitman Jun was extremely mad at Lei Wu Bei. Correct. Our family indeed has incurred the grudges of two powerful organizations. But it doesn't mean that anyone can come and step on us as they like. His precise words had been, the Jun family has provoked two powerful entities. And now they've added this old man to that list as well. It seems that it will be necessary to take action against them. This old man doesn't wish to see you there when he annihilates their entire family. Otherwise, I doubt I will let you off either. The mere thought of Lei Wu Bei's words had set Jun Moxie's stomach on fire. This was a clear threat for the solitary falcon to abandon the Jun family. D*****. I've somehow duped a great master to come and protect my side. So what if you're the fifth great master? Bullsh***T. You're merely the fifth master. And yet you dare to oppose me? Even if you were the supreme master, Yun Bei Chen, what could you do? I will kill you, the first chance I get. Why even wait for an opportunity? Let's play right now. Let's see who beats whom. Jun Moxie was full of rage. Extreme hatred had accumulated in his gut. D*****, old man. You had 10 apprentices. And 4 of them are dead. It seems that it's not enough yet. I can't sort you out for the time being. Nor can I deal with your remaining Sky Xian apprentices. However, I can assassinate your crippled apprentices. You think that's going to be difficult for me? So your heart aches for your deceased disciples? Then this young master will make your heart ache once again. Jun Moxie was recklessly angry. The hitman Jun couldn't help but recall the Jun family's ancestral teaching, having balls does not make you a man. It is the incomparably indomitable spirit which does. Good. I'll send them to their F***king ancestors. Jun Moxie cursed in anger as he unleashed the yin-yang escape at full speed. He darted back towards the city like a wisp of smoke. His desired destination was the Li family's residence. I don't care if your Bullsh***T ranks 5th or 6th in the list of the great masters. I will make you cry today. I will tear you down and turn you into a kite. His speed increased exponentially because of his anger. He searched the Li residence thoroughly, but couldn't find anyone. Does no one live in the Li family's residence? This is very alarming. What's going on? Young Master Jun scratched his head upon finding the place deserted. Finally, he stamped his foot in frustration and then infiltrated into the ground of the locality. He carefully searched while he listened for a giveaway sound to a hidden private chamber. 1 lap of the residence, 2 laps, then finally. A strange voice grabbed Jun Moxie's attention. The Xian beast crossbows are very important, everything has been arranged carefully, but the good thing is. Several intermittent words reached Jun Moxie's ear. Jun Moxie suddenly became alert. He slowly and carefully followed the sound to its source. I've been making a plan to capture the Xian beast tendon crossbows. But surprisingly I've found other interested parties as well. This is an unexpected gain. These are Xian beast tendons and materials used in the frame of crossbow's body make an excellent combination. Their lethality will be immense. Even an Earth Xian expert will find it hard to evade its attack if they're caught off guard. It is a rare and killer weapon. It is a pity that we have to give up on these. A person with a musical voice sighed. Why are we giving it up? Junior disciple Li. We can't let them go so easily. This is a very rare opportunity for your Li family. These weapons are ready-made and good to go. These are of a special make. These crossbows will make terrifying killing weapons. Will you let this opportunity pass you by? Why would you do that? Another person spoke in an anxious voice. Jun Moxie could listen properly by now. This was the voice of the senior-most disciple Lei Jianhong. He was eagerly trying to persuade someone. Elder brother Lei, how could I not see the importance of these crossbows? The voice that replied was sonorous, graceful and extremely refined. One could imagine this person's graceful personality by merely listening to his voice. He was audible to Jun Moxie as he continued. 10 brother disciple had come to Tianxiang City to help you Ran. But I've done nothing for Master in return. Yet, I've only received Master's aid and my senior's affection. I'm truly ashamed. And 4 of my seniors have left for the heavens because of my matters. And 3 of my seniors have been crippled for life. This little brother is remorseful. What right does this little brother have to exert himself in front of his seniors? If some misfortune befalls the senior brothers again, wouldn't Li Yuran's behavior be considered worse than a beast's? Junior disciple Li, why are you talking like we are strangers? We are brother disciples. Your matter is our matter. Lei Jianhong anxiously replied. And if these crossbows ended up with the second prince, heaven knows what that idiot would do? This could turn into a major threat. The Jun family won't be the only one to get affected if the second prince succeeds. Your Li family will also be affected, along with the emperor's ironclad strength. How can you not see this? Junior disciple. This matter demands immediate action. You've always been so firm. Why are you being so overly sensitive at such an important time? Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 276. I'm not satisfied yet. No, elder brother. But your junior brother appreciates your feelings. Li Yuran seemed pained as he shook his head. Elder brother, do you know? When I close my eyes at night, I see the 4 seniors standing in front of me. They're drenched in blood and covered in scars. I, Li Yuran, am ashamed to face them. The second prince will use his entire strength to escort these crossbows to the capital. The number of secret experts will be too many to count. If anything bad happened to you, elder brother, your little brother, might as well die. Jun Moxie couldn't help but inwardly curse when he heard that emotional sigh. What? This Li Yuran is too pretentious. He is at the greatest level. This guy could even beat me. Why did you deliberately mention it to them if you didn't wish for them to take action? You've just told them the rationality and the threats of this course of action. And then you stated your desire to refrain from participating in it. But now they won't stop no matter how hard you try to restrain them. They'll be touched when your words convey that you don't wish for them to go, so much so that they might even leave without telling you. This scheme is amazing. And I was belittling this brat before? You want them to become cannon fodder for you. But you want them to be moved enough to volunteer for it themselves. You wish for them to feel that they owe you. And you wish for them to feel that your concern for them will cause you big problems. You're hot and numbing, at the same. You're pretending to be real while you pretend. That's for sure. How's that possible? 3 voices shouted in unison. How can we sit and watch as our younger brother's family slips into a dangerous situation? What are we then? What kind of people does little brother treat us as? We'll relax only once the Li family obtains those crossbows. This matter doesn't need so much deliberation. It's already decided. When the time comes, we 3 will act. We'll win the Xian beast crossbows for Li Yuran. We'll hand them over to you. If younger brother Li is still uneasy, then you can send some of your men to support us. Eldest brother. Second brother. Elder sister. Li Yuran had seemingly been moved speechless. However, he seemed to become more and more resolute as well. But how can your younger brother respond? I, your younger brother, am ashamed, and my conscience is uneasy. A man acting effeminately indecisive? What are you doing? You are decisive, then why don't you go to that place? This was apparently the voice of the female senior. Younger brother Li. Why won't you let us go? Do you want us to watch while your Li family slowly descends into danger? Master has been very generous. I won't let elder sister and the elder brothers walk into danger. Li Yuran could be heard speaking these words. It seemed as if he was resolutely gnashing his teeth. This is rubbish, his 3 seniors shouted angrily and pounded the table. Then, Lei Jianhong started to speak. Younger brother Li, we will refuse to recognize you as a fellow disciple if you continue to talk like this and look down on us. I'll kick your buttocks. And I'll never look at you again. It seemed as if heroism had reached its pinnacle. It felt as if both parties were treating each other with the utmost sincerity. The young Master Jun was still hiding in the soil. He almost broke into laughter. What is this? What trash has Lei Wubei taught his disciples? Lei Wubei wouldn't volunteer to personally take action, right? If this is the case, you, big brother, must be very careful. Li Yuran's diction wasn't very clear. It seemed that he was choking with emotion. I beg my seniors to be very careful. It doesn't matter if I get those crossbows, you must return safe and sound. I will assign you the maximum number of troops. Please don't be stingy with the manpower. And I won't care if they are sacrificed to ensure your safe returns. You mustn't hesitate to spare any expense. Be at ease. We will take care of everything. And prepare for the good news. Younger brother. The 3 people patted their chests. They were brimming with feeling of heroism, one which could even lead them to die for their friends. Jun Moxie didn't laugh this time. Instead, he let out a profound sigh. It seems that they will spare no effort to help Li Yuran. Apparently, Li Yuran has completely brainwashed these 3 individuals. Lei Wubei's eldest, and these 2 other disciples, are in a pitiful situation. It's no wonder that these 5 powerful experts managed such a bleak result when they encircled and fought a lone Yi Gu Han. Men without wisdom are pathetic. Many thanks, elder brothers. Elder sister. According to my information, I believe those crossbows should reach the outer reaches of the capital in 13 days. We'll make our move when the time comes. It could be assumed that Li Yuran must have taken a deep bow before he had begun discussing the specifics of his plan. Everything was clear to Jun Moxie after he had listened to them for a while. He had no interest in listening to Li Yuran play with those idiots. Moreover, he had suddenly formed a new plan in his mind. Of course, it was for later. It was time to kill a few people now. The hitman Jun had never forgotten the original purpose of his visit. Overhearing this important information hadn't interfered with Jun Moxie's determination to kill. He silently surfaced above the ground and found himself in the middle of a huge but empty courtyard. Jun Moxie looked up and realized why he could not locate the Li family's main operation center. It was located outside the Li family's residence. It was located in the area next to the Li family's residence. So that's why. He then turned as he heard a voice of someone's groan. The person seemed to be in pain. It came from a side room. This room was surrounded by green bamboos. Jun Moxie's mouth bent into a cruel smile as he moved into that room, as quick as lightning. The room reeked with the smell of medicines. 3 of the disciples were lying on soft mattresses inside the room. They were mostly stationary, except for an occasional twitch. And they looked deathly pale. Ah! It's pitiful to look at you in so much pain, elder brother. Let this little brother free you from this world of suffering. Jun Moxie sighed compassionately. Then, a sword which hung on the wall, which might have belonged to one of those 3 patients, suddenly rose on its own. The sword then started to move like a meat cleaver. Puff! 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 The 3 men had been fatally wounded during their excursions. It was amazing that they had been able to persist for so long after. But one mustn't delay more than 1 breath's time if they wished to resist fate. Blood and flesh splattered. The speedy 6th disciple was the last one left. He stared blankly when he saw the sword float. He couldn't believe his eyes initially. Then, he saw it come down like lightning on his senior and junior brother disciples who lay at his side. He felt weird when he saw their heads separate from their bodies, and then roll about like watermelons. He was extremely frightened by this sight. He was about to cry out in alarm, but something unseen covered his mouth and he was unable to shout. The thing that covered his mouth seemed to be a hand. It was warm. But why was it invisible? Why is it invisible? Does this world really have ghosts? He had just thought this when he saw the unmanned sword chop down on his neck. Jun Moxie stopped his hand from making more chops, and coldly picked up a piece of cloth. There was blood everywhere. He smiled mischievously and crookedly as he dipped the cloth in the blood and wrote several characters on the wall. I wasn't satisfied after killing those 4 people. So I've killed these 3 too. But they were already half dead. So how could I be satisfied? Wait for a few days. I'll hack open the final 3 as well. But if I'm not satisfied with that, then it will be your turn, my dear cold-blooded master, Wu Bei. But he didn't feel satisfied with these threats. Hence, he added several more characters. He left the room once he was satisfied with his work. The distance between the side room and Li Yuran's location was barely over 30 meters. The hitman Jun had used a method which had increased the speed of his movements exponentially. And his actions had been urgent. He had been able to kill the 3 people without any resistance. No loud sounds had been emitted over the entire course of his covert operation, just a highly subdued and the entire mission had been completed. This was the basic skill that was required from a good assassin. It wasn't considered to be something amazing in this line of work. Besides, this sword is very sharp. He was convinced that if anyone heard him, they would merely think that they heard a lot of fart noises. Therefore, no one would know that the men in that small room had been relieved from their mortal suffering and had gone to heaven until Jun Moxie was finished with his task. The hitman Jun had barely escaped that courtyard when he saw the silhouette of a man floating towards his direction. The man's hands were dirty. His movements were calm. They were neither too fast nor too slow. He was frowning slightly, and it seemed that he was having difficulty with some problem. His name could shake all land under heaven. He was the cold-blooded Master Lei Wu Bei. You old B*****starred. You've arrived too late. Jun Moxie smiled ruthlessly, and deliberately brushed past him. Just as Jun Moxie brushed past him, Lei Wu Bei seemingly sensed something. There was no change in his body posture, but he surged his powerful qi in a split second and it frighteningly burst out. Jun Moxie suddenly felt the burst of powerful qi hitting him and became gloomy. Jun Moxie stuck out his tongue in a tease and moved into the Hongjun pagoda. You think that I can't hide from you? I'm in here now, try to find me if you like. However, no one has ever sensed my presence like this. So how come Lei Wu Bei was able to? Jun Moxie crouched in the Hongjun pagoda and thought hard. Could this wonderful yin-yang escape have some shortcomings? Or is it possible that masters with such high level of cultivation can detect my anomaly? Jun Moxie suddenly recalled that he had just killed some people. This meant that his body must be emanating a cold killing intention. He reckoned that Lei Wu Bei must have felt this dangerous killing intention. Moreover, his aura contained a massive feeling of hostility towards Lei Wu Bei. Suddenly, Jun Moxie realized that this incident may have been a normal occurrence. So, I can hide easily when I'm not hostile or I don't have the killing intention about myself. However, I might fail once I get into that mood. He obviously dispelled the idea of stealthily killing the great master. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 277. The Super-Misunderstanding. Hitman Jun's inference was reasonable, but it was slightly inconsistent. The yin-yang escape was a wonderful evasive technique. So much so that even the 8 great masters couldn't find Jun Moxie's tracks. But the yin-yang escape didn't use the 5 key elements for the time being. One could go into hiding, but they'd still be discoverable for they weren't escaping into the void. The technique merely altered the flow of air to create this anomaly. This technique wasn't much of an anomaly from this perspective. In fact, it was quite ordinary. A person would basically be walking around with some alterations in the flow of air around their body. The vast majority of people were unable to detect these subtle changes. However, who was Lei Wu Bei? He wouldn't have been worthy of his name if he couldn't detect these changes. He could easily notice even the most minute changes in the flow of air. However, the situation in front of him was too weird. He had never witnessed such a strong killing intention. He could infer that the strength of the individual emanating it was quite profound. Therefore, Lei Wu Bei had released his powerful qi in order to protect himself. However, Lei Wu Bei couldn't sense it once Jun Moxie entered the Hongjun pagoda. Jun Moxie had realized this in time. He felt frustrated and remained inside the Hongjun pagoda with a blank expression on his face. He stayed there for a while and reckoned that he'd escape once Lei Wu Bei left. He came out to take a peek and realized that Lei Wu Bei was unexpectedly rooted to the same spot. Moreover, the young master Jun had barely come out of the Hongjun pagoda while being invisible, yet Lei Wu Bei's eyes quickly turned to look in his direction. It seemed as if his eyes were a pair of jack-o'-lanterns. D***MN. This fart has a lot of free time. Jun Moxie felt very helpless since he had no option but to return inside. He inwardly cursed Lei Wu Bei. I won't be able to get out of here before break of dawn at this rate. This isn't good. A great master would never doubt his spiritual sense. Though the young master Jun's odor subsided in a flash, but it left a deep impression on Master Lei. And he wouldn't dare to neglect it. Lei Wu Bei had nothing to concern himself with while he returned from his confrontation with Solitary Falcon. Therefore, he had slowed his speed down. Moreover, he had attempted to look for the mysterious owner of that groan throughout the journey. This had slowed him down even further. He had barely returned to the vicinity of the Li mansion. But he suddenly felt that bloodthirsty killing intention so close to his own body. He had no option but to mobilize his Xian Qi as he prepared to move into action at a second's notice. He had clearly felt that sharp killing intention. It's terrifying. Only the world's top assassin had the ability to emit such an intense killing intention. Such a ferocious killing intention could even kill a great master like me. Therefore, Lei Wubei didn't dare to neglect it. He released his powerful spiritual pressure. And then waited alertly. Hitman Jun's killing intention and murderous aura were far beyond that of an ordinary person. And Jun Moxie was well aware of it. His strength may not have been very tyrannical. However, that didn't lower his killing intention. Lei Wubei concentrated hard as he remained there silent, calm and unmoving. That cold killing intention suddenly disappeared. And everything is calm again. In fact, there's no sign of any danger. I can't help but find this strange. Was I imagining it? But why would I imagine something like this? He would have let his guard down since he felt that he had been overly suspicious of a lurking enemy. But that murderous aura had momentarily resurfaced just when he was about to do this. Moreover, that murderous aura had appeared very close to his body. However, there was no one present near him. Lei Wubei was about to move into action when that extremely terrible and lofty killing intention suddenly disappeared. It had vanished without a trace. Lei Wubei was terrified. What kind of a peerless killer would possess such a terrifying skill? Lei Wubei's entire body was covered in cold sweat. This was because he had suddenly recalled a terrifying person. This person's Xian level might not have been anywhere near Yun Bei Chen and Li Ju Tian, but Lei Wubei's chest had stiffened at the mere thought of him. This person was a very formidable individual. He had been active for dozens of years, and no one had ever escaped him once he had decided to assassinate them. This man was a legend among the community of assassins. Everyone avoided him like the plague. Even Yun Bei Chen and Li Ju Tian had never dared to take this man lightly. He was a frightening killer with mythical abilities universally recognized as the living embodiment of death. He was the greatest assassin Chu Chi Hun. Who else could emit such a sharp, powerful and fatal killing intention? Who besides Chu Chi Hun is capable of hiding right beside me, without me becoming aware of their presence? Who besides Chu Chi Hun can disappear once I detected their killing intention? There's no one else, not anywhere in the world. Even Yun Bei Chen and Li Ju Tian wouldn't be able to pull this off. They can defeat me. In fact, they can kill me. However, it's impossible for them to hide right beside me without my knowledge, but Chu Chi Hun has. Lei Wubei's became more cautious as he became increasingly sure about this. And the more cautious he got, the more intense that feeling of fear became. Man is always full of doubts and fear when he faces the unknown. And the great master was no exception, especially since he was aware that he was facing a formidable enemy he couldn't beat. Lei Wubei was confident that his Xian level and strength was in no way beneath Chu Chi Hun's. However, Chu Chi Hun was known to like making the first move, very unexpectedly at that. It would cost Master Lei very dearly to be caught off guard. Getting ambushed by someone of the same level was no joke. Lei Wubei was somewhat afraid. Chu Chi Hun was considered a supreme master of his arts, but he wasn't counted amongst the 8 great maters. Consequently, that assassin would never attack from the front, even when killing an extremely weak person. So much so that even a person whom Chu Chi Hun could defeat by blowing air on him, was never attacked in a straightforward manner. This supreme assassin was extremely meticulous from the standard of assassins. He never left a single loose thread. His ability had reached the point of abnormality. His very name could give any man goosebumps. This was the main reason why the Supreme Assassin never got public fame like the 8 Great Masters. Though Chu Chi Hun wasn't considered one of the 8 Great Masters, but he was the most terrifying man in this world. This was a well-known fact. Even the 8 Great Masters had publicly accepted this. Lei Wubei paid careful attention to his surroundings as he spoke in a low voice. Is the person who's arrived the Supreme Assassin? Elder Brother Chu Chi Hun? Ah. I don't know what offense I've committed that Elder Brother Chu Chi Hun has personally arrived for me. And it's a great honor to have been taken so seriously. But we're both counted in the supreme ranks, so greeting each other before a fight to the death would cause no harm, right? There was silence all around as the autumn wind whistled, the dead leaves fell and spiraled into the air. But there was no reply. If someone had replied, then it would have meant that ghosts truly existed. The only spectator had no choice but to hide in the Hongjun Pagoda. The individual hiding inside the Hongjun Pagoda was obviously Jun Moxie. However, the hitman Jun had decided not to utter a word. He eagerly looked forward to watch Lei Wubei misunderstand the situation. The greater the misunderstanding, the better it would be for the young Master Jun. Won't Elder Brother Chu give me face? Lei Wubei gnashed his teeth. His voice was full of anger. Has the Elder Brother changed his mind? Would he not battle me to death? No sound was issued in reply. Lei Wubei calmed down, but his demeanor continued to become more imposing. He spoke in a deep voice. It sounded similar to the calm before a volcanic explosion. Is Elder Brother Chu afraid to face Lei Wubei? That's okay. Elder Brother can return whenever he's gained his confidence. I shall eagerly look forward to seeing you again. He had finished speaking. Then, his body transformed into that of a spirit dragon who was soaring towards the 9th heaven, and disappeared without a trace. Jun Moxie stepped out from the nothingness of the Hongjun Pagoda the moment Lei Wubei left. He had been stretching out half of his head to listen to Lei Wubei's words. He had almost burst into laughter when Lei Wubei had addressed the heir in such a serious tone. However, he was awestruck to realize that his fellow assassin enjoyed such a terrifying reputation among the great masters. So much so that the mere thought of him had worried the 5th master of the 8 great masters. In fact, the cold-blooded master had seemed scared. This supreme assassin must be exceptional. The fact that an assassin could have this effect was an achievement on its own. Jun Moxie returned home relaxed and unrestrained while marveling at that supreme assassin. Lei Wubei quickly arrived at the small courtyard. His body floated as he opened the gate. The 4 people inside stood up at the sight of him and greeted him respectfully. Master, you have returned. Lei Wubei snorted coldly. His face was expressionless as he took a seat. Master, what was the outcome of this trip? Can we assume that Master has taught Solitary Falcon a lesson? Lei Jianhong was Lei Wubei's son. However, he never addressed him as his father in front of his fellow disciples. This was to demonstrate equality of treatment. But he was the only person inside the room who had the courage to ask this question. This matter is complicated. We'll discuss it later. Lei Wubei spat out these words in a solemn manner. You be more careful with your actions from now. The atmosphere in the Tianxiang city is very treacherous. There are many crouching tigers and hidden dragons present in this city. You'll have to think hard before acting on every matter. He thought for a while, but then finally resisted. Lei Wubei had decided against mentioning the supreme assassin, Chu Chi Hun. He was aware that the name itself would have been enough to frighten his disciples. This would have made them hesitant to take actions. His disciples were at the Sky Xian level, but that was too meager. They would have gained no benefit from knowing of his involvement. Chu Chi Hun has decided to make a target out of me. I shouldn't tell my disciples about it till the outcome of this battle is decided. Why should I make my disciples unnecessarily nervous by speaking of this matter? The 4 disciples were no fools. They had heard the tone of their master's voice and had realized that the matter regarding the solitary falcon hadn't gone as smoothly as they had imagined. They restrained themselves and inquired no further regarding that topic. Lei Wubei got up and spoke in a tranquil manner. Let's go. Come with me to look at the 6th. He seems to have lost his Xian Qi. Let's see if we can recover it somewhat. If that doesn't work, then we'll have no option but to send him to the king of malicious medicines. Lei Jianhong trembled and cried out in alarm. Master! Lei Jianhong snorted since his master left the room without giving a reply. The 4 disciples' complexions were heavy as they followed behind. Listening to their master mention the king of malicious medicines had made their hearts heavy. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 278. Soaring Rage. The malicious king of medicines, as the name suggests, was an individual with a malicious heart. He was the most prestigious and famed doctor according to the rumors. He was considered without an equal. However, this doctor was the most expensive in the world. In fact, not only was the fee he charged exorbitant, there was another crucial point. One would owe him a favor if they were to seek him out for a treatment no matter what the final result of the cure was. And one would have to return the favor whenever he wanted. As the capability of the person seeking treatment increased, the matter he'd wish them to deal with increased in difficulty. There was one particular rumor regarding the malicious king of medicines which had spread far and wide. It was a matter that had happened over 40 years ago. The Yun family was one of the most influential families in the world of commoners. Their patriarch's little concubine had been critically injured, and he eventually went to the malicious king of medicines for help. The medicine king took 1 million silvers from the Yun family and made their patriarch promise him to deal with a certain matter. However, the medicine king didn't tell him what that matter would be. The Yun family's patriarch readily agreed to these conditions owing to his love for that concubine. Consequently, she was saved. 2 years passed, and the malicious king of medicines sent a late yet important request. He wanted the Yun family's patriarch to kill someone. And this person was the Yun family's ward by marriage. How could the Yun family's patriarch do such a thing? What face would he show to the world if carried out this request? Therefore, he flatly refused. The malicious king of medicine laughed heartily. He didn't consider this a problem. He then vanished into the dust. He left without a trace. Later, the malicious king of medicine spread some news. He asked anyone who owed him a favor, no matter who they were, to do one thing: annihilate the Yun family. Even their family's chickens and dogs weren't to be spared. The entire family was to be annihilated, straight down to their 9th generation. The malicious king of medicine had accumulated several favors over tens of years. How could it be trivial? His favors were mostly qualified individuals. And most of them were high-level Xian experts. A majority of them were dealing with illness they couldn't have cured otherwise. However, strength alone can be a limited resource. But many rich and powerful people owed him favors too. And they became extremely formidable altogether. Their combined power was rare and powerful enough to shake the world. This order was a death-dealing blow. The whole of the secular world boiled over because of it. This resulted in the entire Yun family's slaughter. Their relatives and clansmen weren't spared either. They had ensured that even the chickens and the dogs didn't survive, as was the wish of the malicious king of medicine. The rumors state that the heads kept pillion outside the malicious king of medicine's place. The massive amount of blood was said to have covered kilometers of the lands. Heaven knows what strange favor that man would demand if Lei Wubei decided to deliver his disciple to the malicious king of medicine. Lei Jianhong knew that his master was one of the great 8 masters. So how could the conditions be easy? However, their worries were removed and replaced with grievances. Lei Wubei's expression changed as he arrived at the side of the bamboo-walled side room. He said, "Why is there such a thick stench of blood here?" The 5 people looked at each other. They could sense that something was terribly wrong. They cried out in dismay and pushed the door open. The 4 disciples were heartbroken at the sight and exclaimed in grief. They were dumbstruck and could only look around blankly. The scene drove them mad with anger. 3 dead bodies lay on the beds. They had been chopped into pieces. Blood was still flowing inside the room. It had coagulated in some places, but continued to pour out slowly from others. The entire room had turned into a scarlet pool of blood. Lei Wubei's eyes had reddened as he stepped into the room. His clothes didn't even sway as he moved. He was extremely angry and was forced to use his supreme Xian level to restrain himself. He had even controlled the movement of his clothes by doing that. He looked around and saw Li Yuran stand motionless in front of a wall. Li Yuran's posture was strange. Lei Wubei's mind suddenly understood the reason behind it. He then shouted, "Get out of the way, Yuran!" Li Yuran showed an ugly expression. He then weakly spoke, "Master, I told you to get out of the way." Lei Wubei roared in rage as he hit Li Yuran hard on the face. The youngster was sent flying out with a loud bang. Lei Wubei then looked at the wall. Lei Wubei gawked at it for a while. His face had turned red and he suddenly let out another enraged roar. The band on his hairknot got torn into a million pieces as his hair straightened. They rose up to the heavens unscattered for a long time. Arg! Lei Wubei violently belched scarlet blood from his mouth. And that blood instantly turned into mist. Master Lei cried tears of blood, thereby damaging his liver as he howled. "This scoundrel is shameless. He acts such with me. No matter who you are, I'll kill you. I will annihilate your family down to the 9th generation. Even chickens and dogs won't be spared. My name isn't Lei Wubei if I don't fulfill this claim." He again spouted blood as his lean body tottered forward. The act of bringing the world-famous cold-blooded master to such a condition by leaving a mere message had demonstrated that person's unprecedented talent. The 3 remaining disciples were perplexed. Therefore, they leaned in closer only to find 2 blood-stained lines written on the wall. The message was crooked and had been written in freehand. It was obvious that something had been dipped in the victim's blood to write that message. The first line read, "I wasn't satisfied after killing those 4 people. So I've killed these 3 too. But they were already half dead, so how could I be satisfied? Wait for a few days. I'll hack open the final 3 as well. But if I'm not satisfied with that, then it will be your turn, my dear cold-blooded master, Wubei." The second line read, "Elder Sister Lei Wubei, I did your mother, la la la." The 3 disciples felt a burst of darkness. It was nearly as strong as that of Lei Wubei's. They spat blood. This was too much. That person had killed their brother disciples. Moreover, he had called the fearless Lei Wubei elder sister. And what's more, he had hurled abuses at their master. This is a huge insult. Especially to master. Just that line, elder sister Lei Wubei will never die, and will continue to ferment hatred. Not only has that person killed our brothers, but he has insulted Master's ancestors. That man's conduct is incomparably vile and nasty. Master. The 4 disciples worriedly knelt in unison. They crawled 2 steps forward. They then held on to Lei Wu Bei's legs and burst into tears. This matter clearly occurred moments ago. The blood hasn't even dried yet. You weren't far from here. And none of you sensed it? Who can tell me why? Lei Wu Bei's body swayed for a little while. Then, he suddenly flew into a rage and let loose 4 kicks on the kneeling individuals. The bodies of the 4 disciples flew into the air, and they started to vomit blood violently. Waste! The 4 of you are a waste, the cold-blooded master, Lei Wu Bei, exploded. He had never shown such anger in his life. His eyes were red, and his expression was fearsome and frightening. It seemed as if he was looking for someone to lash out on. Bang! The whole of Lei Wu Bei's Xian Qi exploded at once. It collided with the room's roof. The roof broke off and soared high into the night sky. It almost seemed like a floating umbrella. The walls toppled, turned into thin dust and disappeared. The bamboo grove outside the room looked like it had been hit by a tornado. It had been uprooted and thrown into the air before being crushed. Lei Wu Bei still hadn't moved from his spot. But his heart was gradually calming down. He then thought of a possibility. The only rationale which could explain this matter was Lei Wu Bei's eyes had turned into deep pools of blood. He took a deep breath. He then spoke extremely slowly, but his voice was full of hatred. Chu Chi Hun. You and I cannot coexist in this world any longer. I will kill you. Lei Wu Bei looked up and issued a long roar. It was similar to that of the mythical ape crying into the night, extremely mournful and shrill. The lengthy roar was extremely loud. It spread far and wide. The citizens of the Tianxiang city had heard it loud and clear. It endlessly echoed at a low pitch. Each person in the Tianxiang city awoke from their sleep frightened and uneasy, without exception. The Jun residence. The solitary falcon got undressed and sat down. He frowned and resentfully looked in the direction from where the roar had come. He then cursed. Murder! Murder! .NU. You've screamed twice this evening. Are you confused or what? .NU. The older you get, the sicker you become. F*CK, you old uncle. Why are you putting pressure on me? And this, targeting of Chu Chi Hun. Do you wish to hasten your death? The solitary falcon cursed for a bit, and then lied down. Jun Moxie was inside his room when he heard that lengthy roar. He rolled his eyes and muttered, I should have written the entire poem. Unfortunately, my language is quite limited. Therefore, I couldn't write it. Old Lei, the words I left you were deficient in literary talent, but they must have been easy to understand. However, you needn't have been so emotionally moved. Oh, I had forgotten to mention the name of my fellow assassin. How did you decide it was him? This matter doesn't concern Master Chu. It was my work. But this young master doesn't mind if the mad dog bites someone else in confusion. So don't look for me if you feel like losing it. He was in a happy mood. So he sniggered for a while. But the talented, young Master Jun was very tired after a day and night of hard work. Therefore, he lied down and fell into a deep slumber. Jun Moxie envisioned several pleasant dreams throughout the night. There was even one in which he was inside a hot spring. And he was surrounded by outstanding beauties, each of whom could cause a nation's downfall. They were pure and lovely. Yet they had one common characteristic: they were an asterisk ked, and each one of them was silently inviting him. However, the hitman Jun felt a bit strange, even though he was only dreaming. I wasn't aware that one can produce such dreams in everyday life. It seems that my morals are degrading with every passing day. It seems that even gentlemen cannot overcome this. This implies a significant fall from the grace of morality. He suddenly transformed into a tiger. It was only natural for a tiger to consume his meals once he enters the forest. The N*ked tiger courageously leapt into that beautiful forest and started to bite. He waged wars everywhere, slaughtered his prey, and emerged victorious each time. Someone had crept into the young Master Jun's room. But the little girl had been frightened by the canopy under her beloved's blanket and bounced back. Jun Moxie was sound asleep in front of her. His expression was shockingly lewd and nefarious. This smile was similar to the one the young Master Jun used to frequently display about half a year ago. The people who'd see it would feel that it was unbearable. She lightly cursed since she felt embarrassed to see such a vulgar smile. The little girl then shifted her gaze downwards. Her small mouth suddenly opened and became round in shock. She almost screamed in shock. But luckily she had moved her hand to cover her mouth in time. This is extremely scary. I almost fell down. The naive and chaste little girl had nearly fainted. Her body trembled for a while. Then she hastily fled from the room. Only then did she feel that sensation in her fragrant cheeks. She wasn't aware when they had become this scalding hot. She covered her burning pretty face. She couldn't sleep. She only tossed and turned the entire night. Whenever she'd close her eyes, she'd see that smiling face of her beloved young master. The little girl held the top of her quilt firmly as she covered her head with it. He's a big scoundrel. How can you? Will I get pregnant now? The little girl's heart started to thump as she engaged in her fantasies. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 279. This is very embarrassing. The next day, the sun hadn't yet risen. Jun Moxie hadn't gotten out of bed. He was still researching his sensuous dream, and had made a very shameful discovery. He could no longer wear his underpants since he had discovered a huge wet spot. He had even felt the sticky spot with his hands to confirm. This is indeed very shameful. Such wet dreams can happen to me, Hitman Jun. This is very humiliating for me. For God's sake. Who's going to believe it? My illustrious name has reached rock bottom. The young Master Jun quickly pulled his quilt to cover his first-time defeated body. Then, he looked around carefully and then quickly raised his butt to pull off his pants. He'd feel extremely uncomfortable if he didn't change it. His movements were incomparably swift and nimble as he took off his clothes. He kept the quilt in place with one hand, and stretched out the other to feel for an appropriate place to dump them. However, then, suddenly, bang! The door of the room was suddenly thrown open at that frightening moment, and Grandpa Jun stormed in with his flowing white beard fluttering across his anxious face. He fierily entered the room and shouted with his mouth wide open, "You brat! You're still not up. Don't you know what time it is?" He had run into a person in that extremely embarrassing moment by pure accident. Fortunately, it was a man, an old man. Jun Moxie felt like dying. His hand extended and he pulled the quilt back like lightning. He then repeatedly promised from underneath that cover, "I'll get up. I'll get up. But you go out first." "What are you holding in your hand?" Grandpa Jun got suspicious. And not only did he not leave, he instead took 2 steps forwards. He then frowned and glared angrily before he shouted, "Take it out and let this old man see." "It's nothing. It's nothing, it really is nothing." Jun Xie felt that he had never been in such a difficult situation in either of his lifetimes. He dug deeper into his quilt as he complained, "Grandfather, you don't have any courtesy. I was sleeping and yet you barged in with that bang. Luckily, I don't have a wife. But, supposing you had found a wife for your grandson, would you've barged in like that if she were here with me?" What did he say? Grandpa Jun became extremely angry. His eyes filled with dark look as he said, "Evil creature. How can you speak those words? This old man, you brat. You haven't hurried and gotten up yet? You really wish to trouble this old man?" Grandpa Jun grabbed the quilt with one hand and pulled it. How could that little rookie like Jun Moxie resist a Sky Xian expert's strength? Grandpa Jun looked at what was in front of him. Jun Xie looked like he had just awoken from a dream. He couldn't help but become red. He swung his arm and then slapped Jun Moxie's bare ass hard. A sharp bang resounded. "Show me what you're hiding." The reached out with his hand and tussled that crumpled piece of cloth from Jun Moxie. That ball of cloth felt damp for some reason. This was unexpected, and he didn't know why it was like that. He gawked at it for a moment, and then brought it to his nose and gave it a sniff. Then, he recognized the strange yet familiar smell emanating from it. He realized everything in a split second. His embarrassed face reddened, and he quickly threw it away. Then, he continued fiercely, "This old man will kill you. You shameless little." The blood-curdling scream echoed everywhere. It sounded extremely mournful. Jun Wu-yi heard the blood-curdling cry and quickly rushed over. He reached in time to run into his father. The red-faced old man was emerging from Jun Moxie's room while puffing his whiskers. However, the inner corner of his eyes showed a faintly amused expression. "Dad, Moxie pissed you off again?" the third master asked solemnly. "I didn't raise that little beast." Grandpa Jun trembled as he shook his right hand and remained silent. It seemed that he wanted to say something, but he didn't utter another word. He continued to tremble for a long while, and then he finally said, "Alas, that brat has grown up, it's time to look for a daughter-in-law." He then slipped away with his hands behind his back. However, he suddenly remembered why he had come there in the first place when he reached the door to Jun Moxie's courtyard. Hence, he roared from afar, "Oh right. Third, you hurry up and get that little beast ready. He is to meet His Majesty." He then vanished with the whooshing of his clothes. The commander-in-chief of the troops of the country, the great General Jun, seemed quite embarrassed regarding today's matter. The hero of his generation had actually held his grandson's lethal weapon. It was very humiliating. However, he couldn't help but smile even though it was a gloomy matter. The old man seemed somewhat reassured. It was big he's attained a decent capital. His capital hasn't reached the level of a grown adult. But he's going in the right direction. He's barely 16. And there's a lot of room for growth at this stage. Hurry up and grow branches so you can scatter leaves for our Jun family. Grandpa Jun placed his hands on his chest and started to move as if he was carrying a baby. His face suddenly broke into a smile at the thought of it. The third master entered the room and saw his mystical nephew acting subdued like he had never seen him before. Jun Moxie lowered his head like a bashful young lady and pulled up his clothes. Something extremely fishy was going on here. What the hell was that shout about? I didn't see what you did, you little devil, but your grandfather was clearly very angry. However, he seemed to be rejoicing something. His expression seemed like he was cursing you, but he was also smiling. Hurry up and explain this to me. Jun Xie was baffled. Jun Moxie was without an option. He looked up in embarrassment and asked reverently, "Third uncle, I beg you, please don't ask." This matter could not be discussed face to face. The young master Jun was brazen. His skin was thicker than the corners of the Great Wall. But this matter was too humiliating for him, no matter how shameless he was. This was an extremely serious matter. Jun Xie learned what had happened from his father over their meal. They were dining with the solitary falcon. So he must have heard it as well. Jun Xie was eating rice when he heard this. The rice turned into 2 white lines as he chalked, and came out from his nostrils. In fact, he nearly spilt the food over solitary falcon's body. Master Falcon didn't get angry even though he had nearly been spat on. He had a strange yet blank expression on his face for a while. Then, he laughed till he was breathless. He hadn't been this happy in a long time. He had gotten to fight Lei Wubei the previous night. That had made him very happy. But this was a very amusing matter. Jun Moxie and his grandfather ignored the 2 men whose laughter knew no end, and focused on eating their breakfast. The general in the wheelchair and the 8th Great Master couldn't restrain their laughter the entire duration of the meal. Hence, the grandfather-grandson duo quickly finished their meals, mounted their horses, and proceeded towards the imperial palace. Jun Xie and the solitary falcon were still laughing as the 2 of them left. It seemed as if the 2 men had been nearly engulfed by devil fire. It was not known why the emperor wanted to meet Jun Moxie. What kind of a crazy request was this? He was supposedly holding the previously cancelled Golden Scholarly Talent Repose that day. And that too in the imperial palace. This was extremely unusual matter. The news of this had been issued last midnight. The Master of Rites, Minister Sun Chenghe, ran his legs rugged. Naturally, the people who were busier than him were the masters of the Heavenly Literature Institute, since their students were looking forward to the festivities quite eagerly. Their students had been very disappointed for a long time upon finding out that the feast had been cancelled. However, this sudden news had caused a wild rush, especially since the venue was the Imperial Palace. It was decided in the evening that the event must necessarily be held the next day. However, this meant that there would be many people who wouldn't be able to participate. Several white-haired masters cursed in their hearts. What kind of an order is this? You must learn how to contain yourself even if you're anxious to suck the milk. But he was the most powerful emperor under the heavens. If he wanted it to happen that day, then it would happen precisely on that day. Hence, this group of white-haired old men couldn't dare to refute his order and cancel it, since it would be akin to ruining the golden road of their scholars' development. The timing very tight this time. The venue was enormous and the scale of the event was unprecedented grand. The young masters of every important aristocratic families were invited. The event would include the 3 princes. The other princes would take part as well. Even talented young women from major families were welcome to show up. Jun Moxie, Tang Yuan and the other notorious debauchees were also on the list amongst other well-known names. So, the 2 of them received an invitation each. Grandpa Jun's face was calm along the way, and he didn't speak. Jun Moxie pondered hard and felt that there was something wrong with these events. The grandfather-grandson duo simultaneously felt that the so-called Golden Scholarly Talent Repose wasn't going to be a good feast. This is very abnormal. This is extremely abnormal, it is to the point of being unreasonable. Jun Moxie had a faint feeling that there was an incorporeal net which slowly closing upon him. Jun Moxie was puzzled. Why am I feeling like this? D****. No one ought to be aiming at me. Admittedly, I'm an outstanding talent of great erudition and scholarship. I'm conversant with things past and present, and am familiar with a variety of verses, and am a master of the 4 arts. But these people don't know that. So what status do I hold in their eyes? Moxie. Today's matter, this old man feels that something is wrong. Grandfather Jun Xien's gaze was dignified. You should avoid making a fool of yourself. As much as possible. Jun Moxie smiled in order to relieve his grandfather. Grandfather, do you distrust me? By no means do we feign madness and foolish acts. I'm the #1 debauchee of Tianxiang City. What's point of hiding my foolishness? I'm born foolish. Little devil. Grandpa Jun felt teased by him. He smiled as the pressure on him decreased greatly. A tower of meat stood with a straight posture in front of the imperial palace. Jun Moxie gazed as his dear friend and laughed. Tang Yuan and him were surely brothers in the same boat. Grandpa Jun went on ahead into the imperial palace first. Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan crouched outside and leaned against the wall. These two seemed very nefarious sitting in that posture. The young masters of each family and the gifted scholars sat beside them. They looked bright and neat. There was an air of elegance and sincerity about them. These two young masters seemed out of place when compared to them. Some people were unable to recognize these two mischievous figures sitting at a distance. They inquired the others about those two. You don't know? You don't even know these two, an astonished voice asked. This was quite astonishing. It was similar to the Americans not knowing who Washington was, the French not knowing who Napoleon was, and the Germans not knowing who Hitler was. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 280. I'll show you what makes me a rogue. Why? How on earth would I know? Are they famous? The person asked astonished. Are those two wretched and smug-looking guys amazing individuals? It doesn't look like it, from what can be seen. Haven't you heard of the pests of the capital? The other person replied in a lecturing tone. Are those two the pig Tang and the evil tyrant Jun? The tick in the latrine and the fly on the table? Correct. Those two are the legendary, the fat pig, Tang Yuan, and the evil tyrant, Jun Moxie. They are indeed the tick in the latrine and the fly on the table. They are this generation's two greatest calamities. No wonder I felt like thrashing them when I first saw them. So that's why. The pests of the capital surely live up to their name. Yes. And their arrival is a very harmful event. To think that these two pests are qualified to attend the golden scholarly talent repose. Alas, the morals of the public are on a decline. These degenerates are a part of the same generation as me. I wish could grab my head. Such a shame, it seemed like the speaker had let out a long sigh. This opinion was bubbling everywhere. Everyone slanted their eyes as they looked at the two calamities. They even pointed at them as they whispered. Everyone's eyes reeked of hatred while their expressions were full of disdain. It seemed like Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan hadn't heard any of it. They continued to behave free-willed. Fatty, do you remember what I told you that day? Jun Moxie kept his voice low. I can't forget it. Tang Yuan opened his eyes lazily. Do you still distrust me? I'm afraid that you are a dim-witted lard. And your fat eyes may not be able to see properly. Jun Moxie cursed. A gentleman does not attach importance to nonsense. Ah. My grandfather always says that. Tang Yuan seemed very proud. You dare call yourself a gentleman? Jun Moxie retched. Who else would be able to call themselves a gentleman now? Jun Moxie was quite satisfied after watching Tang Yuan's showface. He looks like a real rogue today. It would hard for the rogue in me to abstain from killing him. Are we waiting here in vain? How long will I have to wait? When will I get a chance to showcase my immoral behavior? Hey you. What are you looking at? Never seen a handsome guy? Jun Moxie slanted his eyes and asked a youngster who was looking at him stealthily. The young man had oiled his hair and put makeup on his face. He belonged to the well-known Meng family. Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan had been involved with him and Meng Haizhou once before. They had falsely accused Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan of cheating after they had lost a lot of money. Hence, he pretended as if he didn't recognize them. I'm not looking at anything. Meng Fei slanted his eyes and tilted his head as he shouted and looked at the back of Jun Moxie's head. Every influential family had received an invite. The Meng family wasn't a small family either. Hence, they too had been invited. F***ck off. Jun Moxie gave a long shout. He pulled up his sleeves as he advanced. Who the F***ck are you? Do you know who you're talking to? Bullsh**t. Your mother won't be able to look at you by the time I'm done with you. I'll dig out your eyes and plug them in your anus. Believe me. A blue vein popped on the young Master Jun's neck. His eyes narrowed as the spittle scattered from his mouth. Fei Meng stood upright in his spot with his oiled hair and powdered face. Why have I attracted their interest when everyone is looking at them? Why should I suffer when everyone is talking about them? Jun Moxie's curses had turned his face red with anger. His mouth silently moved to murmur a few angry words. But nothing audible came out of it. Let it be, third young master. There's no need to reduce yourself to the level of these lowly commoners. Tang Yuan hastily and magnanimous consoled his friend. The two rogues had been at it for a long time. Their coordination was seamless. Tang Yuan pulled at Jun Moxie and said, "Leave it. We'll go to the throne room soon. And we'll amaze everyone with our brilliant feats. We'll show them our unparalleled talent. And who knows, maybe we'll impress the emperor. He may bestow the highest official position upon us, then we can satisfy our desires for a government position." You're right. Jun Moxie caressed his hair and threw it behind his back as he puffed his chest. I shouldn't reduce myself to the level of these commoners. The two youths echoed one another, while the people around them had a sudden and fierce urge to vomit. Getting bestowed with the highest government position? With that behavior of yours? And your unrivaled talents? This is bullsh**t. The donkey that wasn't aware of its place was indeed about to find out. Jun Moxie. What do you mean? You think I can't bully you? The coquettish and powdered Mei Feng had been stood tongue-tied for a while. However, he suddenly controlled his breathing and let his rage loose as he cursed Jun Moxie. Everyone look. This youngster unnecessarily creating a scene. You cannot blame me. Jun Moxie played the innocent victim and spread his hands. I think of every influential family as a friend family. Therefore, I've come here. Isn't every influential family is unknown to the others? Yet this beast is unwilling to let go of anything that I might have said to him earlier. What is this place? This place is the Imperial Palace. Yet this young man is roaring in such a way. Does he wish to revolt? Or is it that the Meng family wants to usurp the throne? Everyone went dizzy. That was too shameless. He doesn't have a single iota of shame. His accusation was baseless. This is too much. You're talking nonsense. Meng Fei became dizzy with anger. His body started to shake like dead leaves in the wind. The debauchee Jun hadn't overlooked this. He quickly dashed towards the youth and gave him 2 loud slaps on his face. Then, he caught hold of the youth's legs and kicked his abdomen. Jun Moxie's movements had been very swift throughout. Meng Fei was caught off guard. He hadn't anticipated that the opposing party would make such a move inside the imperial palace. The youth was left stunned. In fact, he could see the stars as his waist twisted. His body started to resemble a shrimp as he clutched his stomach. The young Master Jun didn't fall back. He continued to attack even though the enemy was down and in pain. He wasn't going to allow this opportunity to slip. The powdered face of the Meng family's young master turned plump like a pig soon. In fact, it looked very similar to Tang Yuan's. Everyone stood up. This Jun Moxie is too much. Let it be, young Master Jun. Everyone makes mistakes. Forgive him. A youth with an indignant expression blocked Jun Moxie as he raised his foot to stomp the Meng Fei again. Everyone looked at the scene with excitement. The youngsters from the prestigious families looked on as the city's biggest debauchee, Jun Moxie, fell from grace. And who are you? Are you here to support him? What is your status? Do you not know what offense this youngster has committed? Did you even see what he did before you decided to show up in his support? Jun Moxie's lower body was positioned in a very crooked manner. He twisted his butt, and his body started to resemble an S character. He then put his hand on his waist and tilted his head. And now the young Master Jun appeared like a giant teapot. I am Murong Qianli. I'm of the Murong family's 3rd generation, the youth in the ornamented gown answered. His face was full of arrogance as he raised his head slightly to look at Jun Moxie. He then calmly addressed Jun Moxie in a loathsome tone. 3rd Master Jun, oh. Won't you give me face? This was merely a misunderstanding. That's all. So why don't we turn this hostility into friendship? Oh shoot. It's the Murong family. I'm scared. I'm very scared. Fatty, come and save me. I can't breathe. Jun Moxie pretended to be excessively shocked as he jumped. He even exaggerated his shout as he thumped his chest. In fact, it seemed as if he had received a huge shock and his heart would jump out. Then, his expression changed so quickly that it would seem as if he had suddenly put on a mask. Are you trying to scare me? Has the Murong family arrived to pressure me? TSK. Jun Moxie extended his neck towards Murong Qianli before he smiled and gnashed his teeth. Ha! Murong Qianli. You're awesome. Who here doesn't know the famous Murong family? Hee. Jun Moxie continued in an eccentric tone. He didn't give Murong Qianli a chance to speak. Do you think that your Murong family is stronger than mine? Hee. Murong Qianli. You're representing the Murong family at such an age. It seems that the Murong and the Meng family plan an uprising in my Tianxiang city. I can clearly see that. Jun Moxie nodded. I never said I represent the Murong family. And I've never talked about a rebellion. So stop spreading this rumor. Jun Moxie. This method that you use on the others won't work on me. Murong Qianli noticed that several of his clansmen were giving him a meaningful expression. Hence, he hastily explained himself in a loud voice. You don't represent the Murong family? Then why were you jumping about like you do? *T. So any Tom, Dick and Harry can bully me now? This is immensely disappointing. Jun Moxie frowned before he looked up straight again. Why were you feigning to represent the Murong family if you don't in reality? You're blocking me. Look here. I said look here. Damn it. Do you want me to castrate you inside the imperial palace and then serve it for sausage? Hurry up and let go of me. Damn it. Jun Moxie's arrogant and despondent behavior gave rise to a lot of anger amongst the gifted scholars and the young masters. A lively discussion spurred as everyone started to criticize him. Jun Moxie put his hands on his hips, and then faced everyone in front of the main hall of the imperial palace. Then, he started to engage the crowd in a war of words with his foul tongue. His spittle kept flying everywhere. The torrents of filthy language and curses continued to increase, but he didn't back down 1 inch. It was like an old verse of poetry. No matter the might of the army, I'm the peer that docks them. Another verse could be used to describe him. He opened his mouth to scold 1,000 accusing fingers. Fatty Tang looked at Jun Moxie's slim and lofty figure with a great deal of admiration. He would continuously exclaim, "That eloquence! That reaction! Indeed very shrewd! You're awesome!" The other party was rendered helpless. This is going one way. It like a child is chewing a candy. Many mouths had started to voice their opinions, and the public sentiment was soon greatly roused. That too in front of the main hall of the imperial palace. The loud noise soon started to resemble that coming from a fish market. It seemed as if it would soon turn into an all-out fist fight. Such impudence! This is the imperial palace. Who dares to cause such a clamor here? Don't you want your head intact? An extremely loud and dignified voice echoed like a ceremonial drum. Everyone had been shouting loudly, but they suddenly raised their heads and looked up. They couldn't help but shout up to the heavens in plea. The big shots, including the patriarchs of every major family, stood at the gate with a dark expression on their faces. Suddenly, everyone's face became covered with a layer of frost. What a disgrace! Dugazong Heng's loud shout spurred their world in chaos. The face of every youngster suddenly became sullen and their heads lowered. Their hearts were filled extreme hatred towards Jun Moxie. The impression we had so painstakingly built in the minds of our elders has suddenly been lost. We've fallen in the eyes of our seniors, and it's because of this guy. Ugh. This story will be continued to chapter 281. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.